I am McBride Nkhalamba. I'm with the Continental Secretariat of the African Peer Review Mechanism, which is a specialized entity of the African Union based here in Johannesburg, South Africa. My role at the Secretariat is I'm responsible for research, development and methodology, which encompasses a whole spectrum of the work of the APRM research, looking at research that informs our work, as well as research that informs the reforms that are undertaken by governments in the areas that we work with. The areas we work in are democracy and political governance, economic governance and management, corporate governance, and sustainable development policy. The methodology component of my work involves looking at the processes that we undertake as we provide support to countries to undertake assessments, which is the core mandate of the APRM. The Africa Governance Seminar Series were conceived by the APRM as a way of bringing the practitioners and the academics onto a platform where they can have an exchange to look at what is it in the practice that could be improved as informed by the academia, and what is it in the academia that they can learn from practice. So that was the primary purpose. I'm sure you're aware we have had first, second and third industrial revolution. In that respect, we focused on two sub-themes. The first is the post-COVID era. We were interested in what will governance look like in the post-COVID era. The second was governance reporting. I'm sure you have heard that there are challenges with reporting on the continent in a number of sectors, not just governance. And so we're looking at how the fourth industrial revolution, with what it brings, big data, data analytics, artificial intelligence, automation and so on, how that can actually change the face of governance, from elections, from participation, and in the area of data, how it can improve how data is collected, how data is processed, and how data is shared. As you saw, we had students, doctoral students, people who are studying digital governance, digital sovereignty, and we also had practitioners to look at how this entire domain of the fourth industrial revolution, particularly in the area of artificial intelligence, big data, data analytics, if you want to call it as well, that how that is actually going to impact on governance. Now, the thing to keep in mind is the pace at which technology changes is always a lot faster than the pace at which legislation changes. So legislation follows the changes in technology. Technology is basically coming out of research and innovation, and that pace is not contained or restricted by various public interest or a diversity of interests. So what we are looking at doing is to minimize the gap between the pace of technological change and legislation for that particular technology, in as far as governance is concerned. We now have a lot of online platforms that allow you to access a service, to access commodities or goods without your physical interface interaction with the provider. And the same can be said for democratic participation. So what it means is that governments, those who are actually willing to try out these technologies, will begin to consider having voters vote remotely, electronically. And so the entire process probably of elections will actually be done virtually, electronically, or on some sort of a platform. And we need to pay attention to that. It will affect us either way. If we decide, for instance, that we're not interested in making that change, you may end up with huge voter empathy. People deciding just not to walk to a polling station because they think it's a hassle. They could have voted through other means. So the pressure, we think, post-COVID is really going to be for us to begin to consider the fourth industrial revolution as a major factor for how we govern. And I'm talking about elections because that's the the starting point for any democracy. But there are a lot of others. There's e-government, e-services, how you obtain the various identification documents, a driver's license, a passport, national ID, how you pay licenses, how you claim benefits from the state, for instance, how you manage your tax remittances and so on. All that is going to be very closely linked to technology. But again, what is important in terms of governance is regulating the private sector. You have got a lot of actors in the private sector, industry, the auto industry, the banking industry, the communications industry, that will make advances, and governments must be able to regulate how they actually interact and run these businesses and quite frankly profit from the citizens. So the role of the state in driving attention towards this domain is also very critical. So yes, you have education on one hand, the formal education system, and then you have socialization on the other. And all these are considerations that the state can make and formalize through legislation, policy, and most importantly, public investment, national budget. As they say, put your money where your mouth is. Where are we spending our money? If we are considering and taking the fourth industrial revolution seriously, are we actually putting in money for that across the sectors, in the education sector, in the health sector, agriculture sector, in the home affairs sector, security sector, and so on. And when you look at this whole question of the fourth industrial revolution, in the instrument as we have been revising it and is currently being revised, we are providing for that kind of prognosis that a country after an assessment should be able to determine what will be the impact of technology on a variety of aspects, human rights, consumer protection, all these issues related to governance, public information, and the rest of it. So that is a significant role of the APRM. It undertakes that assessment in a very credible and scientifically credible and legitimate manner, independently.